A Russian fighter jet damages a U.S. drone, and a new military aid package for Ukraine. All of that and more today, July 26th, 2023. Good morning, early birds. I'm Jonathan Lehrfeld, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, the U.S. military said a Russian fighter jet flew within a few meters of a U.S. drone over Syria and fired flares at it. The flare hit the drone and damaged it. This marks the latest in a string of aggressive intercepts by Russia in the region. A senior Air Force commander said the move on Sunday was an attempt by the Russians to knock the MQ-9 Reaper drone out of the sky. The head of U.S. Air Force's Central said in a statement, one of the Russian flares struck the U.S. MQ-9, severely damaging its propeller. He also said one of the crew members operating the drone remotely kept it in the air and flew it back to its home base. Here's why it matters. The incident Sunday is the latest in a series of encounters between Russian fighter jets and U.S. aircraft flying over Syria. In recent weeks, Russian fighter jets have repeatedly harassed U.S. MQ-9 drones that conduct anti-Islamic State group missions in western Syria. But in an incident a week ago, a Russian Su-35 jet flew close to a U.S. MC-12 surveillance aircraft with a crew, forcing it to go through the turbulent wake. Military officials said that maneuver jeopardized the lives of the 4 Americans on board. U.S. and Russian military officers do communicate frequently over a deconfliction phone line during the encounters and protest the other side's actions. Another important story, the Navy and Marine Corps are poised to kick off the second iteration of Largescale exercise next month. Yes, the exercise is in fact called Largescale Exercise. It will bring together more than 25,000 personnel through live and virtual training. This year's drill will seek to refine various warfare concepts, including distributed maritime operations, expeditionary advanced base operations, and littoral operations in a contested environment. Navy leaders said the exercise will use 9 maritime operation centers and 6 carrier strike groups across 7 U.S. fleets to globally streamline operations. Admiral Daryl Caudle heads U.S. Fleet Forces Command. He told reporters this week the exercise will rely on a live virtual constructive environment. That means that ships docked pierside can be virtually placed anywhere in the world to deal with scenarios representing realistic threats. The exercise will also test Project Overmatch capabilities. That's a secretive initiative that Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Mike Gilday kicked off in 2020 to better connect land, air, sea, space, and cyber forces and facilitate international cooperation. The exercise is headquartered at the Navy Warfare Development Center at Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia. It runs from August 9th to 18th. In other news, we're highlighting the selected service members of the year awarded by the Military Times Foundation. Here's the 2023 Coastie of the Year.
What we do in the Coast Guard directly impacts homeland security. And I know that each job that I've had, every watch I've stood, ships I've driven, that what we're doing is protecting our nation. And there is a deep sense of patriotism and pride in that. My name is Chelsea Sheehy. I'm a lieutenant in the U.S. Coast Guard, and I'm the commanding officer of Coast Guard Cutter Charles Sexton. I grew up in North Brunswick, New Jersey. We were in a family that were boaters. We didn't grow up on the water. My brother went to the Coast Guard Academy while I was in high school. I can remember taking him to his first day, dropping him off for reporting in, and that's what garnered my interest. So I went for a freshman for a day and just having a feeling that this is where I belonged and this would be a good fit for me. The Coast Guard has instilled the traits of leadership. I get to be in command of ships, get to have leadership roles and opportunities that perhaps my grandmother never had, but I've been able to have. As commanding officer, I oversee entire safe navigation of the ship, all the missions on board that we conduct, and I'm responsible for everyone's safety. The Coast Guard has 11 statutory missions, but they're all centered around saving lives. We are, first and foremost, always a life-saving service. Back in the spring of 2022, we responded to a vessel that was unseaworthy. and it appeared to be a migrant vessel at sea. We noticed that the vessel was actually capsized and that they were holding onto it, sitting on top of the vessel that was capsized and sinking. They were waving their arms, they were in distress, they were visibly concerned and worried. They didn't have any food, they didn't have any water, they didn't have any flotation devices or safety equipment. And once we got alongside and we started taking them off the capsized vessel, there was moments of relief, and we rescued upwards of 15 people. And if we didn't see them waving their arms, if we weren't there, then within 24, 48 hours, a more dire situation would have resulted. And this is just one of over 60 cases that I've responded to in the last year. Another aspect of the Coast Guard is maritime law enforcement, fisheries enforcement, port security, and drug interdictions. One of the most challenging is drug interdictions. In March of 2022, while on a routine patrol, we detected a vessel moving at a high rate of speed in a known drug trafficking area. We launched our small boat. They ran about 40 knots to this vessel. In that moment, there was an adrenaline rush. There were tense moments too, just because you don't know what kind of case you're going to run into. What we do at sea is inherently dangerous, and especially stopping a vessel with suspected drug traffickers on board, you don't know what you'll be faced with. We stopped the vessel, conducted a boarding, and determined that there were 609 kilograms of cocaine, which equates to about $15.5 million of drugs that was prevented from going to the United States. I'd like to serve until the Coast Guard no longer wants me to serve. I still feel really deep feelings of fulfillment. I'm proud of what we do, and I'm proud to be part of the Coast Guard. It's given me more than just a job. I received an education, training, some of my closest friends, and even my family, some of the people I love the most, I've gained from the Coast Guard. There are only a handful of female commanding officers of cutters in the Coast Guard, so it's important to me to lead by example.
Also on the radar for today, a new security package for Ukraine. The Biden administration is sending up to $400 million in additional military aid to Ukraine. It includes a variety of munitions for advanced air defense systems and a number of small surveillance Hornet drones. The package includes an array of ammunition, such as missiles for the High Mobility Artillery Rocket System and the National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System, to Stingers and Javelins. The weapons are being provided through Presidential Drawdown Authority. Officials said the U.S. is also sending howitzer artillery rounds and 32 Stryker armored vehicles, along with 28 million rounds of small arms ammunition. The U.S. has provided more than $41 billion in military aid to Ukraine since February 2022. The latest package of weapons comes as a Ukrainian drone struck an ammunition depot in Russian-annexed Crimea, and Russia accused Ukraine of launching a drone attack on Moscow. Ukrainian authorities didn't immediately claim responsibility for the strike. Russia's military, meanwhile, unleashed new strikes on port infrastructure in southern Ukraine with exploding drones. The strike was the latest in a barrage of attacks that damaged portions of the port in the past week. And now, here are some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. We're following a developing story out of Ukraine. The State Department said Marine Corps veteran Trevor Reed was injured while fighting there. You may remember Reed was previously jailed in Russia and released in a prisoner swap last year. At this time, there's little information available about the nature of his injuries. He was transported to Germany for medical care. A State Department spokesman said Reed was not engaged in any activities on behalf of the U.S. government. An official said a suicide bomber targeted a military training academy in Somalia this week, killing 25 soldiers in the capital of Mogadishu. Al-Qaeda's affiliate in East Africa, the Somalia-based Al-Shabaab, claimed responsibility for the attack. Reuters is reporting that Australia is set to buy 20 Super Hercules military transport planes in a $6.6 billion deal. The announcement comes as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin prepare to visit the country this week. And there's new insight this week on unidentified anomalous phenomena, more commonly called UFOs. A recent report suggests public accounts of UFOs were more likely to emerge when civilians were located within 18 miles of a military operations area. The House Oversight Committee is scheduled to hold a hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena later today. And on this day in history, in 1948, President Harry Truman signed Executive Order 9981, ordering the desegregation of the military. However, it took many more years for the services to comply with the end of discriminatory practices. Truman also signed another order on that day to ban racial segregation in the federal workforce. A commemoration event at the Pentagon today will mark the 75th anniversary of the executive order, and we'll have an episode all about that historic move coming out Monday, so stay tuned. That's it for us this morning. To get more of the top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. Please give us a like, rating, and a comment wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on social media at @defense_news and @Military Times. The Early Bird Brief is hosted by me, Jonathan Lerfeld, and produced by Zimone Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by The Associated Press and Diana Stancy. Our editor-in-chief is Mike Bruce. Have a great day.